Welcome, guys, to MSE Countdown. This is David Rosenberg. I'm the pro wrestling editor slash lead writer at MichiganSportsAndEntertainment.com. I'm here with my co-host, Chase Sussex. Chase, how's it going?
What's going on, everybody? I'm doing well. I am the lead editor here for the Detroit Red Wings section at Michigan Sports and Entertainment. How you guys doing today?
So, me and Chase are basically going to try to count down some of the top stories of each week. We know that there's a lot of news regarding sports and entertainment, and that oftentimes it can be too much to consume for busy people. So we're going to try to take your 5 biggest stories of the week, sometimes 6, sometimes 4, depending on how busy the week is. But we're basically going to break those down for you, give us some of our opinions. We're going to give you the big news scoops. So come along with us. And our top story today is the Super Bowl. Chase, did you watch the Super Bowl?
Yes, I did. And Super Bowl 53 was a little bit of a in terms of Super Bowls. But then again, it is 4 long, grueling hours of television. So it's not necessarily the most exciting thing, but it definitely was. There definitely was a lot to talk about. As we all know, unfortunately or fortunately, if you're a Patriots fan, Tom Brady did win his 6th Super Bowl out of 9 Super Bowls that he's been to, which is just absolutely ridiculous. He's been to more Super Bowls than some entire teams have, which is just astounding. I don't understand how that even happens. But Tom Brady just continues his legacy as probably one of the best quarterbacks to ever play in the NFL. Some would argue he is the greatest of all time. Some may not say. I can't necessarily say his performance in that game was necessarily GOAT-worthy because he had like 200-some passing yards and interception, didn't throw for a single touchdown in that game. It was only 1 touchdown that entire game in general, which came by, I think it was like a 1-yard run from Sony Michel. So not a very exciting game. The Rams fell flat on offense. But, I mean, some of the commercials were pretty entertaining, but it is the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I like that you said that it wasn't a very impressive game by Brady because, you're going to have your diehard Pats fans that are going to say it was a gutsy performance. He pulled it out at the end and he made all the big plays, which is true. That's what he does. Belichick has set him up continually for 2 decades now to make those throws and have those players and tools available like a Sony Michel or and Super Bowl MVP Julian Edelman to make big plays when it's a close game, even in the Super Bowl. So with Edelman winning the MVP, I've heard a lot of interesting talk and discussion. Is Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer? Chase, what do you think?
Sorry to upset any Patriots fans here, but I really don't think that Julian Edelman is a Hall of Fame candidate. As good as his career has been, he is really good. I mean, I think he's second all time in catches behind Jerry Rice, if I'm not mistaken. But I think one of the biggest tarnishes on his career is the fact that he, had to use drugs to enhance his career. Obviously, he missed the first 4 games this season with a PED suspension. I just don't think that's someone worth Hall of Fame worthy, especially considering when you look at other sports and there are certain players who, like in baseball, there are a lot of athletes who have not made the Hall of Fame because of drug usage and stuff like that, and the careers have been tarnished of certain players who are, who have used performance-enhancing drugs. So that's just not the kind of person I would think would make it Hall of Fame. I think he's had an excellent career. He is one of the best. He's probably one of the best wide receivers in NFL history, but I wouldn't necessarily call him a top 30 wide receiver. There are some wide receivers even in the top 30 in terms of stats who aren't in the Hall of Fame in the NFL. So personally, I think there are more deserving wide receivers than Julian Edelman in the Hall of Fame. So I would say no to the Hall of Fame.
I think I'm going to agree with you there. According to my stats right here, Edelman has on his career 5,390 yards and about 500 receptions. And I was thinking of another player that played a similar role for a number of years to Tom Brady, and that's Wes Welker. a lot of people argue that Edelman was kind of a replacement for Welker when he left. And Welker's stats are better. So, I mean, he had a longer career, but by and large, they're the same. And if Wes Welker's not a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. So, I don't know how we can call Julian Edelman the same thing. Another person that's been talked about a lot now that the Super Bowl has concluded and the Patriots have continued their reign of terror is everyone's favorite Patriot, Rob Gronkowski. Is he gonna hang up the boots, and is he a Hall of Famer?
I definitely think that Robert Gronkowski could be in the Hall of Fame conversation in terms of tight ends. I mean, I think he's one of the best at his position in NFL history. And in terms of retirement, he could be pretty close. I know the fact that he makes what he thinks is a hilarious joke. I mean, this man is a grown man. He still thinks 69 jokes are funny. So, I mean, the whole fact that he thinks that he was going to retire once Brady went 6-9 in the Super Bowl in terms of wins is, it's pretty funny to me. But
that could be actually plausible, considering it's Gronk. Any other player, I would have my doubts. But Gronk's been known to do some crazy things. I think he is a Hall of Famer. In my head, he's the most dominant tight end the game's ever seen. I don't know if he's the greatest. I reserve that for guys like Tony Gonzalez. Has a lot of respect from me as maybe one of the greatest tight ends of all time. But Gronkowski is definitely a Hall of Famer. In the same way, maybe Shaquille O'Neal isn't the best center of all time. Some would argue he is. But he was definitely the most dominant in his era. No one could stop him. He was massive. He was a force of nature. And that's the same deal with Gronkowski. I don't see how he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, actually. I think we'll see him get in eventually. And if you're not a Patriots fan, like so many people are, he was your one shining moment in that game.
Bandwagon. I'm sorry, I got a little cough, but
did you watch the Super Bowl halftime show?
I did, yes. The Super Bowl halftime show was definitely an interesting one. If you're a fan of Maroon 5, then I'm sure that was definitely interesting, especially for any female fans listening. I know
I got a story
Mr.
about
Adam.
that. I'm gonna get to it.
But Mr. Adam Levine is definitely he definitely had an interesting performance. I know they had the whole big tease with the SpongeBob and Sweet Victory, and they transferred into sicko mode by what was an interesting performance from Travis Scott.
Did you like that? Did you like the SpongeBob nod, or was it not enough?
I don't know if it was enough because I don't know. I mean, it was one of those things where it was like they introed it, and I was like,
well, let's walk it back. Let's walk it back for those who don't know what we're talking about. If you're not on Twitter constantly, like Chase and I probably are, you might not know. There's a song in a classic SpongeBob episode, Sweet Victory, that's played by the cast. It's a very emotional song. It's, I don't know about you, Chase, but it's definitely one of the things that I remember that defined my childhood. So there's been a big push now that I think it's the creator of SpongeBob passed.
Yeah, the creator.
So there's been a big push for that to be, the original scene is in a dome, so it's similar to like a Super Bowl feel. And that's kind of what they wanted to replicate during the halftime show. So what happened is they played a short little clip, which is the actual introduction from the original episode, but they didn't really go into it. So a lot of people are saying that it's not enough. And then Travis Scott came in.
And bless Travis Scott. I mean, he sounds absolutely, I wouldn't necessarily say terrible, but he definitely does not sound good without auto-tune. I would say that I listened to a little bit of Travis Scott, but when his live was definitely interesting without auto-tune. So I think a lot of people were let down. I know the NHL tried to take a little stab at the NFL for the whole Sweet Victory thing. The Dallas Stars played some sort of tribute to that, which I thought was kind of funny. So
I think you can effectively call the halftime show a disaster. This is the quick story I wanted to get into. My mom is a huge Maroon 5 fan. I played a couple of their older songs, and if you're a Maroon 5 fan, their older music is not the same as their newer music. So my mom likes a lot of their older songs and some of their newer songs, but she's pretty much downloaded their entire discography onto her iPhone. So she listens to all of this, and she loves them, but she's never put a face to the band. And, Adam Levine is the face. There's really, it's really Maroon 1, it's Adam Levine. So seeing him strip really ruined the music for her, because he's got somewhat of an angelic voice, and just seeing him kind of up there and acting like what she, I think, quote, I'm not going to quote her exactly, but described as a cheap male stripper show. Yeah, it definitely ruined things for her, and I can't imagine. Lots of people were happy. I'm sure there was some sex appeal. I mean, television has a lot of sex appeal in it, but he didn't sing particularly great. That's not to say he's a bad singer. It's a tough performance, and taking his shirt off probably didn't help with the male audience. I know there's a portion of the female audience that has an issue with it because if you remember years ago, the Janet Jackson controversy where her part of her breast was exposed, and her nipple came out, and I think there was a conspiracy by CBS afterwards to try to end her career. So that's how seriously they took that, but Adam Levine half naked was okay. So there is some argument there. It was a train wreck. They've had much better shows with Bruno Mars, Red Hot Chili Peppers in the past. Beyonce was great. I liked the Lady Gaga one a couple years ago. I can't remember. Didn't The Who play or something like that? But there are much better halftime shows, and this was disappointing to anyone who's a fan. But I guess that goes in line with the game because it was a low-scoring game. It was not fun. Unless you're a Patriots fan, you pretty much wasted 3 to 4 hours of your life last Sunday. I hate to break it to you folks, but that's what happened. Chase, you got anything else on the Super Bowl?
All I have to say is the fact that SpongeBob SquarePants has more Super Bowl appearances than the Lions. Sorry, any Lions fans out there. But there was another piece of news that actually came out of that the Lions actually have to do with the Super Bowl, even though they've never made one.
Let's hear it.
But in the post-game interview, Bill Belichick was getting interviewed, and he was kind of listing some keys to the game of what was, what went into the performance of what the Patriots did to shut down the Rams. And he said he credited the way the Lions defense shut down Jared Goff, and it kind of made him, they made the Rams offense make a lot of plays, and they had, they forced a lot of third down situations, and that's exactly what Belichick and the Patriots said they credited their defensive approach to that game was, which is definitely interesting because
that is some interestingly timed praise. It's Patricia's a Belichick guy, so that makes a little bit of sense. But I guess that's the way to get in the conversation in February. Football, I mean, right?
I think people are just trying to decide whether was it intentional, was he purposely plugging the Lions, because I know Patricia got a lot of flack for his performance as head coach in Detroit in his first year.
Yeah, a lot of fans are not happy with him.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it definitely their season definitely wasn't good. But I think there's a lot of people who think the future's bright in Detroit. It's kind of difficult to know where they're at right now.
I mean, for once we have a running game, and I think that's something that you can actually build upon.
Exactly.
We're not relying on a receiver like Calvin Johnson to just throw the ball, and our defense has changed schemes, and it's a lot different than probably what you're used to if you've watched the past decade of Lions football. But it's a different team, and they have a chance because of that running game. I think I was at the game in Miami where Kerryon Johnson broke the 100 yards, right? That was the first time in 4 years or something.
It was like something ridiculous.
Reggie Bush, I think, in
Reggie Bush,
2015 or something.
Something like that. Yeah,
I mean, that's absurd.
Stupid long time.
So I was fortunate enough to. I live in South Florida, so I'm fortunate enough to have seen that game. But that is something, I guess, if you're a Lions fan, to look forward to, because what's the next thing we have coming up? I guess before the draft we have the combine.
Yeah, the combine. And they definitely also have free agency before that as well. So I think it'll definitely be interesting to.
They already
see
handed out the awards. Did you disagree with any of those? I think off the top of my head, Mahomes got MVP and Offensive Player of the Year. Donald got Defensive Player of the Year. I can't remember who got Defensive Rookie of the Year.
That was Darius Leonard from.
That's right, Darius Leonard. And Saquon Barkley won Offensive Rookie of the Year. Nagy of the Bears won Coach of the Year, and Andrew Luck won Comeback Player of the Year. I believe that's the complete list. But were any of them not wrong, but were there maybe a better choice in your head for any of those positions?
Personally, no. I think they actually got pretty much every single one of those right. I think there was a couple interchangeable players there. I think Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think Baker Mayfield made a really good run as a possible candidate, but I think Saquon Barkley had an excellent campaign in 2018, had like over 2,000 scrimmage yards, which is absolutely ridiculous. All credit to Baker Mayfield for turning around the Browns, definitely recovering from an 0-16 season that they had last year, but I just don't really think it held a light necessarily to the kind of performance that Saquon Barkley put forward. In terms of, I think also Defensive Rookie of the Year, I know Derwin James from the Chargers also was going to make a run at Defensive Rookie of the Year, but I think Darius Leonard had such a good season with the Colts. He made such an impact right away for that Colts defense, a team that started off 1-5 and then ended up making the playoffs. That team was completely turned around. Andrew Luck, I was completely wrong about Andrew Luck. I said previously that he would never throw a football again, but here he has proven me wrong, and he's Comeback Player of the Year.
Chase. Oh no,
I was. I was one of those. I'm going to. I will. Admit defeat there. I will definitely. Take.
It's probably not the worst thing in the world to admit defeat to a guy who you can't really help, but comes back and does what you said he couldn't. So that's a good story, and I think that Luck was definitely the Comeback Player of the Year. I say this every year: Coach of the Year should not go to anybody but Bill Belichick. I hate the Patriots. My roommate, she is a Patriots fan, and every day I am reminded that she is a Patriots fan. So I don't like to give them praise, but Bill Belichick deserves it. They should name it the Bill Belichick Award. He's the best coach we've ever seen, and like you said, this is their 6th in 9 appearances.
The
Patriots are just simply dominant, and as much as we could talk about this entire NFL season and what the Lions have to come, until Tom Brady decides to retire and probably subsequently Bill Belichick, does anybody have a chance, let alone the Lions?
I think once Tom Brady retires, I don't necessarily know if it's Tom Brady, because I think it's just, I've always been one of those people. I really do like Tom Brady, Michigan guy, so I've loved Tom Brady ever since he came out of Michigan. But I have to say that Tom Brady definitely does benefit from that system. I think there are a lot of quarterbacks who go into that system and win a Super Bowl. I just think Bill Belichick is a completely, he's a mastermind, at the head coaching position. So I think it's definitely going to take Bill Belichick stepping down. I really don't think Tom Brady retiring will be the end of the world.
I've always said it's the duo. I completely agree with you there. I don't think Tom does this without Bill Belichick. And I think Bill Belichick has a chance to do it with a different quarterback, but does it work out the same way Tom Brady did? There are lots of character issues with lots of people. Tom is different. He's very loyal, and they have a great relationship. There were those rumors and stuff, but they have a good relationship. They trust each other, and they've won so much together. It's really the duo more than anything. And like I said, I think that once Tom Brady retires, Bill Belichick will also retire, or vice versa. However, they'll go out into the sunset together and laugh about the, 2 decades plus that they tortured the entire NFL.
That's probably a safe bet. I could definitely.
The same argument could be made with LeBron James, except he doesn't need a coach. He's his own coach. He's never going to retire. He's going to be great, but we'll talk about basketball in a little. That brings us to our second story of the night. Also NFL related. What's going on with Antonio Brown?
Antonio Brown has definitely had an interesting offseason, for sure. His most recent drama he's been getting into, there was actually a domestic violence charge that was supposedly put against him. There weren't any arrests made, but apparently, I think it was around a month ago, a girl filed a complaint against him saying there was something along the lines of domestic abuse. There isn't really much detail in the story.
You told me about this right before we went on the air. And I pulled up the TMZ article. TMZ always questionable source, but most of the time they're accurate, so I can't bash them. They do get the scoops. So Pittsburgh Steelers superstar Antonio Brown was involved in a domestic dispute in January, but he was not arrested, TMZ Sports confirmed with police. It says that they contacted a woman in Hollywood, Florida. That's 20 minutes away where I was born. And the details surrounding her allegations are unclear. So there's not a whole lot to this story, but, you said Brown's had his share of issues in the past, and I don't know if you want to go over some of those, but it looks like the Steelers released a statement this morning at 11:43 saying that they were aware of the incident involving Antonio Brown and are currently gathering information. That was shortly after Antonio Brown's attorney issued a statement saying that the allegations were baseless and false, which at this point the TMZ report seems to back up. So this is definitely not good news for Antonio Brown or the Steelers. Didn't he request a trade?
He did. The whole story behind Antonio Brown, he's been in the... And it's just one of those things where he hasn't really been happy with the team for a while, and the team that has him, there's been multiple disputes with him and teammates. There was an altercation. Most of the people think, the most reports I've heard is the fact that the player altercation has been with Ben Roethlisberger, who's also had his fair share of drama in the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room. It sounds like Roethlisberger and Brown got into disputes, and Brown did not play in the game that would have that the Steelers went on to win. But regardless of the fact, it was still a big game because they had playoff implications, and the whole drama was definitely a little excessive. Even Coach Tomlin got involved, which I think was very unjust of him. I don't really think it's necessarily his business to be sharing with the public. I feel like that was just a conversation he should have had with Antonio Brown, and that's what he should have said to the press. He should have said, this is an issue between my Antonio Brown and myself, and it's going to stay that way. It should have never made its way to being public. The situation was just handled wrong. There's clearly just a three-headed dragon over there in Pittsburgh, and like I think Juju Smith-Schuster said, they just need to stop being the Kardashians. They need to start playing football, which is a pretty good quote considering all the drama that's going on in Pittsburgh right now.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that, but I do like Juju is young, but he is wise, wouldn't you say? So, assuming he does get the trade off now that there's all this issue, where does he go?
I think there's a lot of land destinations that make sense. He has, I believe, shared his favorite team right now to go to would be the San Francisco 49ers, which would be a very scary duo. I know he's been kind of hinting at it and, posting all sorts of stuff on social media and liking photos of him in 49ers jerseys and such. And
yeah, he had an exchange with Greg Kittle, didn't he, on Twitter or Instagram or one of those?
Him and George Kittle
George Kittle. My apologies to the Kittle.
Him and Kittle had a bit of a back and forth on Twitter, a good back and forth, not anything crazy, but I mean, there's definitely some rumors that he could possibly go to, because they're in desperate need of a wide receiver. It's definitely a possibility that something like that could happen. Um, in turn,
Jimmy
which would just
Garoppolo
be
and
Antonio
Antonio
Brown. That
Brown.
connection would be
That that
absolutely disgusting.
that sound yeah. That sounds like assuming Garoppolo comes back at his old pace. That's scary. Um,
I mean,
and what does that mean for the Steelers if he's gone? Uh,
I think I think the Steelers would be just fine in my personal opinion because I think Juju Smith-Schuster had almost 1,500 yards receiving last season
that's true.
with Antonio Brown in the starting lineup over him. So I just think that even though I think coverage will be heavier
Antonio
on
Brown
Juju,
definitely took some of that coverage away. So there's an argument there that
absolutely, yeah. I mean,
he'd be
but
the
I
number
feel
one in
like
lockdown.
yeah, exactly. But I think that Juju is ready to take on that number one role in Pittsburgh. I think it just means Pittsburgh needs to either prioritize wide receiver in free agency or just need to draft a wide receiver. Just makes sense. But I just don't necessarily know what the Steelers' plans are in terms of trading him. It doesn't really sound like they want to deal him at this point in time. They've definitely looked at options, but I don't think anything's been serious yet. So we'll have to wait come draft because I'm sure he might be involved in something involving draft picks, something of the sort.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of talk that people want a first round, or Steelers fans want a first round pick for him. I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen either. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, oh yeah, Amari got a first round pick from got dealt for a first round pick from Dallas, which personally I think is too much for Amari Cooper, regardless of how good he has been in Dallas last season. Probably the best free agent acquisition besides maybe Damon Harrison to the Lions, but at least in my opinion. But
those are two strong ones.
yeah, two strong free agent acquisitions. But I just think the Cowboys did overpay a little bit for Cooper in terms of picks. So I don't really think, as good as Antonio Brown is, I don't think they'll acquire a first-round pick for Antonio Brown. I could be completely wrong, but it sounds like teams are really only willing to offer second and third-round picks for Antonio Brown, which does seem kind of low for a wide receiver of his caliber, but he does carry a lot of baggage, and a lot of people don't really want to kind of have to worry about that, and we're risk giving up a first-round pick for someone who they don't really know if can handle himself on the team.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Steelers are going to be fine. Antonio Brown's not worth a first round pick. He's over 30, if I'm not wrong. And that's, notoriously when athletes start declining. It's age catches up to you, and it's not like 30's old by, any normal means. By athletic means, that's when your knees start to fail you and start to slip. And who knows if he can keep it up for a long time. But Juju Smith-Schuster as a number one is certainly not a bad option. So the Steelers are probably going to be fine. And that moves us on to our third story of the night, which is one of my favorite topics. I mentioned earlier that I'm the pro wrestling writer for MichiganSportsAndEntertainment.com. So I write about WWE. If you haven't watched pro wrestling since you were a little kid, which a bunch of my friends tell me, this is a good time to get back into it. There's a lot of big names. Brock Lesnar, former UFC fighter and WWE champion. He's a big name that's on some of the pay-per-views. And the other big name that's kind of dominated the whole thing over the past year is Ronda Rousey. She made her notorious exit from UFC a couple of years ago after losing, I think it was 2 fights back-to-back. She was somewhat disgraced, but she made her big debut just over a year ago at the 2018 Royal Rumble. Most people are familiar with the Royal Rumble format of professional wrestling. 30 entrants, they all come in about a minute and a half to 2 minutes in between, and you can only go out, be eliminated over the top rope. So with a year in, Ronda Rousey actually appeared at the end of last year's Royal Rumble, so this was her first year to have a chance to compete in it, but she's the champion. Surprise. So as the champion, Ronda Rousey has done a number of things for WWE. Her star power and being on the weekly shows is one of the reasons that they signed a deal with Fox to move their SmackDown live show from Tuesdays to Fridays starting in October of 2019. with the bidding war that started with USA, the former home of SmackDown and the current home of Raw, the other WWE show, WWE's going to make out with a couple $2 billion out of these two deals over the next 5 years. So Ronda Rousey, in one short year, has earned Vince McMahon a massive paycheck. So her name in the Royal Rumble and her year anniversary is something that I kind of wanted to mention. Chase, I know you used to watch a little bit of wrestling. Have you heard anything about Ronda or wrestling lately?
I haven't really necessarily heard too much about her, but yes, I used to watch a little bit of wrestling. I have heard that there are kind of rumors swirling around of her possibly leaving after WrestleMania 35. What are kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's that is a possibility. Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter actually reported that the plan has always been for Ronda Rousey to take her year and be on the weekly television shows to kind of help the ratings in the way she did, and to leave after WrestleMania this year in April. I'll be at WrestleMania, so I'll be tweeting and I'll be writing and I'll be letting you know everything that I know. So I'll let you know where to follow me at the end of the show. But Ronda Rousey could be leaving, and the reason she's leaving is not because she doesn't like wrestling, which is what many Twitter people, which are not normal people, if you've ever been on Twitter, like to suggest. She likes wrestling. She's having fun. It was always going to be a one-year thing because Ronda Rousey is in her 30s, and she's married and in a great relationship with her husband and wants to have kids. And that's perfectly fine. And there's been the most influential woman in sports history, if I can say that. I don't know that she's the best female athlete ever. Serena Williams kind of has that in my... But she was a trailblazer. UFC was not... MMA wasn't a sport for women. The thought of kind of women hitting each other and making each other bleed and tap each other out and choke each other was savage to some. And in truth, Ronda Rousey pushed for that equality, and she pushed for the same thing that's kind of working in the WWE. So if she wants to leave after a year and making Vince McMahon a couple $2 billion, she can go ahead and do that and have her kids and enjoy her life and come back on a, 4-time-a-year basis like Brock Lesnar does. I think that's perfectly fine, and that's the story on that. So we're going to move away from wrestling and go to hockey. Our fourth story of the night is
statistically the worst team in the NHL by points. So it's safe to say that the Red Wings have been a little down, but there have definitely been some rumors swirling around the fact that, which is definitely some controversial information, because I don't think the Red Wings should even consider a Jeff Blashill contract. Not necessarily that Jeff Blashill is a bad coach. There's definitely a lot of good things that Jeff Blashill brings to the table. He used to coach in Grand Rapids, and he was excellent with development. But I feel like there's certain things that he does as a head coach that just, I don't know. And it's not necessarily, it doesn't all come down to him, but I just feel like most of the time his team undisciplined. The Red Wings are, they take a lot of penalties, and they happen to be giving up a lot of points on that's just, how it ends happening when you have a poor defense and you have an undisciplined hockey team. You're going to give up a lot of points on the penalty kill, and that's one thing as a coach you have to do is teach your young kids, especially, to be disciplined. And that's not something. So that's something that's one of the biggest issues with that. As good as he is with development, I think discipline is definitely one of the biggest things he suffered with. And then again, it's not necessarily his fault. Is doing his best with what he has, but personally, I think there have been some that he's made that just is not smart. Ken Holland, I've had issues with Ken Holland. The biggest news right now going around is the fact that Steve Yzerman might come back to the Red Wings as GM possibly in the future. Ken Holland has set up some pretty bad contract situations, like Justin Abdelkader and Jonathan Ericsson, to name a few, have awful contracts. Both also are not very good teams. But I just think the way the Red Wings are approaching certain players is incorrect, especially Jeff Blashill. I think certain decisions, like day-to-day operations, like sending kids up and down, I think there was one point in the season where Philip Hronek had 5 points through his last 5 games, and he was getting benched for Jonathan Ericsson, who had 5 points in throughout the entire season. And I just think he's prioritizing game time to the wrong players. Yes, sure, that Ericsson possibly brings, and Justin Abdelkader possibly bring some sort of veteran leadership to the locker room. But to me, I'm just not really seeing that. I'm seeing players like Dylan. Again, Jeff Blashill is prioritizing minutes to players who aren't necessarily deserving. Especially, I think guys like I said, Philip Hronek definitely deserves more time. Joe Hickett's on the main roster. There are plenty of players who are someone who is getting less ice time than Justin Adams. Andres Anthony is currently third in points and second in goals on the Red Wings, and he's getting less ice time than 10 goals on the season. So it's definitely the ice time prioritized in the wrong way. I think it causes the Red Wings to, and I think one of the biggest mistakes is the fact that the Red Wings are planning to stay stable at the trade deadline. I think one of the biggest things is that the Red Wings need to sell absolutely at the trade deadline, sell as much as they can. Nick Jensen, I think, is one of my favorite players to get traded at the trade deadline. Not that I don't like Nick Jensen. He's a really good asset, but I think he needs to be moved in order to continue to build the future of this team. But apparently Ken Holland thinks that this team, I don't run day-to-day operations of the Detroit Red Wings, because if they did, then Jeff Blashill would, I wouldn't necessarily say unemployed, but he would not come close to receiving a contract extension with the Red Wings. So.
Okay, so in your opinion, he should not receive this contract extension. That
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I'm not hockey ignorant per se. I watch, I follow. I just do not know it as well as other sports. But what I do know is that that's an issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think winning percentage is definitely big there. Unfortunately, there's nothing you really do. Again, like I said, the team that he adopted.
But with that kind of record, I mean, I think their first season under him, they had a winning season, but they haven't had one since, and this is looking like it's going to be the third year of mediocre play at best.
Yeah, I mean,
and you mentioned earlier that he thinks they're going to make the playoffs this year. Do you think that's some sort of contract stipulation that he's fighting for his job right now, that there's, hey, we're going to sign you to this 4-year deal, and if you're not back in the playoffs because we're the Red Wings, we're perennial winners, our fans expect us to win, which is all true. Type of influence like that on why he might be doing his job.
I mean, it's one of those things, it's hard to say. I mean, the fans are, the Red Wings fans especially are they expect a lot from this franchise. So I think a lot of people share my concerns as well with wanting Jeff Blashill out. I wouldn't necessarily say these kinds of decisions necessarily influence the way he's coaching per se. I don't really think he's necessarily making a playoff push this season. There are certain times where I'm saying the rebuild and we're prepping for just the future. Like, we're not looking to win games.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you say. That's what sellers do. That's the idea of selling. I think you need to build a future, because clearly there's not a future here. There are decent players, but you could move them to get better players in the future, and it's a win-win for both teams, and that's the best way to rebuild. And if you don't take advantage, the Red Wings aren't just going to have a 4-year, 3-year slump. It's going to be a decade of bad. I mean, that's essentially, right, what's kind of happened to the Tigers.
I mean, that's exactly what the Tigers, big push to win the World Series, and they couldn't win it. So I think it's a little bit different where the Red Wings were, because the Red Wings went 25 years straight in the playoffs and won multiple Stanley Cups under Ken Holland. Ken Holland is probably a Hall of Fame general manager just because of his success with the Detroit Red Wings. But unfortunately, I just think it's one of those things where the Red Wings just need to be like, thanks for your tenure, here's the door. It's one of those things where it's like,
it's time for a change. It's time to move on. I think Red Wings fans and Michiganders in general are going to agree with you there. And I don't think you're going to get too much blowback, but who knows? Maybe you'll get some angry comments for this one. So is that all you got on the Red Wings? Aren't that great?
No, I definitely can't say the Pistons are very good. I'm not a huge follower of the Pistons myself, but I know enough to the fact that the Pistons are just kind of all over the place. I don't really know what their plan is. There's certain nights where I'm just like, oh my God, this team needs to tank and try to get, a good draft pick. But then there's, there's certain reports that I've seen the fact that they're trying to be buyers at the trade deadline, and they're trying to offer some guys up, and it's just, to me, it doesn't make any sense, because there's certain times where you'll see the Pistons go and blow a 25-point lead against the Clippers, or we'll go into a game favored to lose and then win by 26, like we saw in the Nuggets game the other night. So I think the Pistons are kind of all over the place. I don't really think they necessarily know what their identity is. That's just definitely one of the weirdest teams in Detroit, because I think there's, you have the Tigers and the Red Wings who've sort of accepted their rebuild.
Kind of when that championship run, when we were going into the Eastern Conference Championship, I think it was 8 years in a row. That's a lot, and that was a consistent winning that Pistons fans were, expected. And we didn't necessarily do it with the big, and that's a big difference now. I think we've been grabbing at players for a long time, like a Josh Smith a few years back, and we have Blake Griffin. Those are good names, and Blake Griffin is a great player. But
absolutely,
we need a homegrown talent. We need that. Detroit teams don't win. Two, Detroit teams, when they do win, they win with this sort of grit that it takes the character of Detroit, that the city kind of turns into the team, and everyone kind of gets behind them because they're not supposed to win, but they're tough. And that's what like the 04 Pistons did, and that's the bad boys were kind of like that. They were bigger, badder people, but we could overcome. And it's really this LeBron James guy we haven't been able to overcome, and part of that has to do with like our bad drafting. Stanley Johnson, I mean, I had high hopes for him, but he's a bust, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the Pistons have seemed like they've showed absolutely no interest in knowing how to draft, including trading away all their good draft picks. They traded away all their draft picks last year to acquire Blake Griffin, which was a good acquisition in itself. But again, they're looking to possibly get rid of their
first. Not when you trade the farm.
Year.
I mean, now we don't have any. We had like what, no picks last year or something, like
very few picks last year. So it was like,
I mean, we're 23 and 29 right now. There's what, 30 games, 30ish. Trade Andre Drummond or a Blake Griffin, and you get those picks back. Get some picks back, and make good picks. This is not a hard game. This is one player can take you to the playoffs and beat LeBron James. LeBron James is the only single person in the world who can take a team to the playoffs. He proved that in Cleveland, but Blake Griffin's not that guy for the Pistons. Didn't we just drop a game where we were up 25 points?
Yeah, that was against the Clippers a couple games ago. That was absolutely brutal.
I mean, to add insult to injury, his former team.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just, I think that's proof that, and this isn't bashing Blake Griffin. I love Blake Griffin. I think he's exciting. I think he's fun. I think he's great for Detroit. But this experiment hasn't worked out. Our record shows that. We're on the cusp. We're just outside of the playoffs. And I think we do need to just sell, not tank. I don't like tanking. I don't, especially with the lottery, it doesn't work. But if we sell off a Blake Griffin and even an Andre Drummond, we start to build for the future, and that's what's expected. You don't need to go trade for another good player. You need to trade for picks. And that's really all I have to say on the Pistons, because
exactly.
It's just not a great situation.
Yeah,
so we'll move to a happier situation, which is the rest of the NBA, I guess. There's a lot of fun stuff going on in the NBA right now. Anthony Davis, trade rumors. What are you hearing?
A lot of the Anthony Davis trade rumors kind of ridiculous. I know the Lakers trying to heavily pursue Anthony Davis. The Lakers is his primary landing spot in terms of in terms of teams that he wants to land on. I think he also said the Bucks and a couple other teams are desired landing spots. He has like 3 or 4. But I heard recently that the Lakers are now out of conversations to trade for Anthony Davis because of the ludicrous trade offers that the Pelicans are trying to set up. I think they wanted 6 to 8 picks now. At one point, they were requesting 4 first-round picks for Anthony Davis.
Geez, all you got to do is get the Pistons on board, and they'll just give you all of that. That's what we just talked about.
And that's the thing. I mean, it's just one of the things where it's like, the the Lakers were literally willing to their like entire depth for Anthony Davis,
Do you
and
need
the
depth when you
Pelicans.
have LeBron James and Anthony Davis?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it was one of the those two could probably take the Lakers. But then again, I don't really know how many teams are interested because a lot of teams are gonna have to break the bank for him, and whether they're willing to do that is we'll have to see. But right now, just I haven't really seen a whole lot of teams who are interested in Anthony Davis and or at least giving up what the Pelicans want for Anthony Davis.
Yeah, the idea of the Lakers betting the farm and getting Anthony Davis, it sounds nice. Like you said, they can probably only take them so far. So far, by definition, for the Lakers, needs to be past the Golden State Warriors. That's that's the epitome of excellence in the Western Conference as of late. So, will LeBron be in the final?
I just don't really think they have the tools necessarily to big games right now. I mean, LeBron is definitely a game changer, but I think I just don't think he has the pieces around him to necessarily win. It was the same thing. I mean, he did dominate in Cleveland for the longest time, but you had to remember he won with the right pieces. Last year, he wasn't able to beat the Warriors because he just simply didn't have the right pieces around him. So it's one of those things where I'm not necessarily sure if he can necessarily carry the Lakers to the playoff, but it's definitely not out of the question. But it's tough for him to do all the work, and I think that's why they were so heavily trying to acquire Anthony Davis to give him some help. Because at that point you throw depth out the window and you basically just say Anthony Davis and LeBron James make our entire basketball team. So
Yeah, he could, but I don't think he's going to take the Lakers past the Warriors this year. I think that LeBron is a much smarter. Most people give him credit for, not necessarily you or I, but most people see this massive athletic man and assume, all muscle and no brains. But LeBron is one of the smartest people when it comes to basketball IQ of all time. He's rivaled by who? Like a Kobe Bryant, maybe. LeBron is that guy, and that doesn't just apply to on the court. Great thinkers are always thinking. And I know, he signed a multi-year deal with the Lakers. This wasn't just a one and done, right?
yes,
And I think because the Warriors are tough to beat, and he's gone up against them year after year after year. He's been there every year, and he's won. So take a year, take some breaks. He's taking more games off than he used to. He's taking those break games. Establish the base of the team, and then make those signings. Like you said, wait. The Lakers should wait. Sign an Anthony Davis. Sign whoever, because the Warriors will start to implode. That's what a team full of stars naturally does. And you can see unrest in the Bay Area, right? Draymond Green and Kevin Durant, there's been a lot of drama surrounding them. They say it's patched up, but who really knows? Steph's been hurt on and off for the past year, I feel like. But things aren't certain. And now there's rumors of Klay Thompson leaving if the situation is right. Because I think that the Warriors players are starting to recognize that nothing lasts forever. Few things are as dominant as the Bulls run in the 90s, where they went to, not 6 straight, but 6 finals when they had Jordan and won all 6 of them. And that's a very hard thing to replicate. And I think that the players are realizing that. And I think LeBron realizes that as well, and that it won't be long until we see the Warriors as we know them start to dissipate. You've worked hard. We know you're not giving up. You're still playing basketball. You're still going to win. But, take your games off. And, get us to the end of the season. You don't have to be in the finals. And so if we're assuming that the Warriors go to the finals, who's coming from the East?
I think a big candidate there would be Boston. Obviously, the Celtics are a favorite in the East to make. They have guys like Gordon Hayward back from injury.
Doesn't Kyrie Irving also have drama with him about he could be leaving?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely some rumors there that
the NBA is
Kyrie
so dramatic. I'm glad we covered this fifth. It is as bad as that Super Bowl was. I'd still probably rather watch that than deal with all of these personalities in the NBA. Continue.
But yeah, I mean, there's just so many characters in the NBA, like you said. But Kyrie, there was some talks that he could possibly rejoin LeBron in LA, which would just absolutely be scary. But I mean,
Can you
LeBron
imagine?
James. Oh my
Can
God,
you
I just
imagine?
can't.
I mean, right? Like they probably. I mean, that's why they went to L.A. Right? They probably signed the movie deal already. I mean, that's. Jeez, I can't really see another team beating them. I mean, they'll have struggles, but I
Yeah,
think they're the
and
team.
yeah, I mean, I think the Celtics are obviously the favorite. I mean, the Raptors are also there too.
The
Um,
Raptors are always there, but can they get over the
yeah,
hump?
that's one of the things I think that's one of the biggest things that they have to kind of overcome there.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
come playoff time, that'll be their.
yeah.
They'll have to prove themselves, but I think ultimately you're right. The Celtics. So, are we assuming Warriors Celtics? Then can we jump ahead to the?
I think the Milwaukee Bucks are also in conversation. Giannis is one of the best players in the NBA currently.
You're
The
not going
Greek
to attempt to
Freak.
pronounce his last name.
I'm not going to attempt to. I'm going to butcher it. I'm not going to have him come after me, even
I'm
though
going to
he's
go
not going
for
to
it.
listen to this podcast. But
Giannis
Ante-
Antetokounmpo.
Antetokounmpo.
I
That's
think
that's
I got
probably
it.
a pretty good. That's probably a safe bet. I didn't want to butcher it. I don't think our fans deserve to
Well, the
hear that.
listeners can let us know. Did I get it right? Did I say Giannis's last name? But you're right. We can't pencil in anyone. We can pencil in the Warriors. Yes.
I think the Warriors are pretty safe to pencil. In
All
terms,
right.
I just don't really think there's much competition there for them.
Are we saying
um,
that they're going to win the finals again, or are they whoever they face? Are they going to get some competition?
I think it'll be interesting this year. I definitely there's some interesting contenders in the West as well. Who could give the Warriors a run for their money? I think a surprise team is definitely the Denver Nuggets. Also, you got like the OKC Thunder and the Trailblazers over there in the Western Conference. So I think there's definitely some people who could give the Warriors a run for their money, but I think they make it to the finals, and I think it'll be close with whoever they end up facing. I think the Celtics or the Bucks would make a really good series in the finals and even the Raptors in the finals as well. I think all of those would be really good candidates for finals. I think it would definitely be nice. I think but obviously it'll still be the same cut and dry Golden State Warriors, but we're yet to see whether the team in the Eastern Conference can topple the Warriors, the super team they got going over there.
Well, it sounds like Chase isn't necessarily ready to give the Warriors another title, but I am. I'm impulsive and I like to pick things. So I'm picking the Warriors. You heard it here first. I'm probably certain that you didn't hear it here first. But I'm making my prediction right now. The Warriors will win the finals. We'll get back to that in some time and see if I just made a fool of myself or not. But we've talked for a full hour, so we want to thank you very much for listening to the Michigan Sports and Entertainment Countdown. This is our first go around, so bear with us. I hope you enjoyed what we had to give. And Chase, where can we find you online?
You guys can find me on my social media. You guys can follow Twitter at Chase Sussex. Also, be sure to tune in to the Hockeytown Rundown podcast, which I currently run, as well as the Twitter on there. So if you guys want to interact with me, if you guys are Red Wings fans, feel free to either interact with me on my main Twitter or on the Hockeytown Rundown page. We will get in contact with you. And I'm always down for some conversation, any kind of controversy or talk about the Red Wings. I am your guy for that. What about you, David?
Yeah, well, just to go over that again, Chase Sussex at Chase Sussex, and then at what's the Hockeytown Rundown podcast? Twitter.
It's Hockeytown Rundown, but it's hockey like TWN and then run DWN is the app. So.
All right, perfect. You can find me, like I said, I cover pro wrestling for the site, so we have at MSE, I believe, _ pro wrestling. And then you can find me personally at David Rosenberg with 2 G's because someone got my name before me. I love to talk wrestling. I really love to talk all sports. I'll really debate you on anything that you feel like you want to talk about. Follow me at David Rosenberg on Twitter. Look out for our articles. Chase and I are writing constantly for MichiganSportsAndEntertainment.com. We're your premier site for all Michigan info. We have your scoops on Spartans, Wolverines, Pistons, Lions, Tigers, and pretty much anything you can think about. We have a great entertainment podcast, so we want to just thank you again for listening to us, and we'll see you again after a while.